This moment, I would like to welcome Leanne from Joburg. Leanne is a psychologist, and she will talk about, well, how we can use self-care strategies to develop our resilience. And well, she will have her own perspective on the difference between positive and emotional intelligence. She will tell us about the 5 sages inside of us. And yeah, well, Leanne, why don't you introduce yourself and tell a little bit about what you have prepared for our group, for our audience, because I just browsed through your slides and it looks amazing to me.
Thank you very much. It's really a privilege to share my thoughts with you on such a relevant topic. And I think given where we are across the world, even coming together in a group like this, where we're able to share some of our own thoughts and perspectives, is tremendously helpful. So yeah, as you mentioned, I'm an industrial psychologist. So I've been in private practice ever since 2007. So a lot of my work has been done in the corporate sector. And a lot of that speaks to how I've been able to live my purpose. And my purpose in this world from the early age of 22, 23 years was to really help people to live more consciously, to be more consciously aware of what their intention is in the world and what is the impact or the effect that they have in the world. So through my practice, I've been able to really work with that purpose closely with people to create that kind of shift. I've also had the real privilege of taking on the role of executive coach also for about 20 years. And I've been able to work with executives across the world, really helping them in very senior influential roles to be more conscious around their behavior and the impact that has in the world. And then more recently, over the last 4 to 5 years, I've specialized in a field called medical coaching. In South Africa, it's a new field. I'm not sure if you have heard of it. Medical coaching really is about supporting people who are in the midst of a medical crisis. So it's to support them to build the necessary resilience, to really develop emotional, mental, and physical resilience, to live beyond their circumstances. So I'm increasingly doing more work with people who find themselves in that space. So what excites me a lot about today is I believe that we can take command of our thoughts. As human beings, that is a power that we have. And in so doing, we can ensure that we develop our own resilience and enable ourselves to live beyond our circumstances. So things have been particularly trying. We're living in very challenging and uncertain times, but we are still at the helm. We can still take command of our thoughts. And through today's talk, what I'd like to share with you is a perspective around how we might do that. So that's what I have in store for you today, and I hope that sounds like something you'd get curious about and you'd like to hear more about.
Me for sure.
Thank you, Jutta. All right, so I'm going to get started, if that's okay with you. Awesome. Okay, what I want to do is just start my little stopwatch. There we go. Okay. So as I've just mentioned, I believe that we can create our own stress through the way in which we relate to our thoughts and how we experience the world around us. So I believe we all have a choice to make. And during this webinar, I invite each of you to become more consciously aware of how your choices are shaping how you're experiencing your life right now. So during this webinar, I'm going to invite you to do some personal reflection And so it would be helpful if you could just take a moment and think about a challenging situation, a bad situation that you're currently facing and would like to change going forward. So just try and think about one of those challenging or bad situations that you're grappling with. And we can work through that through the webinar. Secondly, it would be great if you could have just a pen and a notepad so that you're able to jot down some of your thoughts as we go. Okay, so what is self-care? So self-care describes a conscious act one takes in order to promote their own physical, mental, and emotional health. And there are many forms that self-care may take. And my hope is that this picture is quite familiar to you. It might look like the famous wheel of life with all our different aspects that we consider when we traditionally think about our own self-care. So how are we doing in the physical part of our lives? How are we doing in the social aspect of our lives? Now, I'm not going to talk about this because it's most generally the general knowledge that you can read up on yourself. And also by applying your own logic, you're able to say to yourself, across each of these aspects in my life, what's the plan that I'm going to put in place to increase my self-care? Now, putting the plan in place is great. The problem is that we often fail to implement our plans because our minds sabotage us. So you might think your mind is your best friend, but it's also our worst enemy. We have undetected saboteurs in our minds, which cause most of our setbacks. And the worst part is, normally without our full awareness that they're even doing that. So how to overcome the saboteurs in our minds that get in the way of us implementing these self-care strategies is the self-care strategy I'm going to explore with you today. So what exactly are these saboteurs and how do they come to live in our minds? They are an automatic set of habitual mind patterns, each with its own voice, its own belief, its own assumptions, and they work against our best interests. We each develop saboteurs early in our childhood in order to survive the perceived threats of life. Saboteurs are our survival strategies that aim to ensure both physical and emotional survival. By the time we are adults, these saboteurs are no longer needed, but they've become these invisible inhabitants in our minds. We often don't know they exist. The challenge is once they have formed, they don't voluntarily just leap out of our minds when they're no longer relevant. They hang on in our heads and they get more and more entrenched. The worst damage is caused by those saboteurs who have convinced us that their lies are actually working for us rather than against us. That means they've become accepted and trusted in our inner circles, and we don't see them as intruders. So current breakthrough research across various fields such as neuroscience, organizational science, and positive psychology suggests that through self-observation, you can identify and you can weaken your saboteurs. So your saboteurs live in the reptilian part of your brain called the amygdala. The part of the brain that gives us access to our greatest wisdom and insights is located in the prefrontal cortex of the brain. We call this area the sage part of the brain. Now, these muscles have remained weak from years and years of not being exercised enough. However, these brain muscles can easily be built up to give us much greater access to our deeper wisdom and our insights and untapped mental powers and resilience. Your saboteurs and your sage are literally fueled by different regions of your physical brain, and they are strengthened when you activate those regions. The strength of your saboteurs compared to the strength of your sage in turn determines your positive intelligence, or your PQ level, and of course how resilient you are and how much of your true potential you actually achieve. So, to develop our resilience, to live beyond our circumstances, is a conscious choice. You each made a conscious choice to invest time to attend the seminar today. Now you have the choice to commit to transforming yourself by learning firstly how to identify and weaken your saboteurs, and secondly how to activate and strengthen your sage part of your brain, so that you too can live beyond your challenging situations and circumstances. So let's explore these saboteurs. Our aim is not to develop a deep psychological understanding of their roots and where they come from. Our focus is more on understanding how they sabotage us today, so we can rely on what we can consciously observe in ourselves each day. So I invite you to think about the bad situation, the challenging situation you find yourself in, and to identify how these saboteurs have contributed to getting you into this situation. As I talk about each saboteur, I encourage you to score yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 means this particular saboteur has absolutely no influence, and 10 means the saboteur has enormous influence on getting you into the situation that you find yourself in. Okay, so let's begin. The perfectionist, I'll be starting with number 1, tells you it can bring you peace of mind and joy and harmony by creating perfect order and perfect quality in your life. Sounds wonderful. However, by trying so hard, you run thin and you cannot make everything perfect. And therefore, you are consciously anxious as things start to fall short of perfection. So what influence do you think this saboteur has had in creating your current challenging situation? Write down a score of 1 to 10. Right, the pleaser. The pleaser tells you it can help you to have better relationships by constantly saying nice things to other people. And of course, by denying your own needs and never ever saying no. But by constantly only saying nice things, people don't trust you as much. And by giving and giving and giving because you just can't say no, people get used to taking advantage of you. And so you become frustrated and resentful, which actually breaks down the relationships. So what influence has the saboteur possibly had in creating the situation you find yourself in? The hyperachiever promises that it can help you to be happy in life by achieving great results and success through portraying a good image of yourself to other people. However, when you experience glitches and things don't go according to plan, which is bound to happen at some point, your whole identity, your self-image is at risk. And you become terribly stressed out because you realize you risk being seen as a fraud. So what influence has this saboteur had in creating your current situation? The victim. The victim tells you that it can help you get the love and the attention you need by being a victim. However, people get tired and very quickly move away from being a victim, which then leaves you feeling abandoned and unloved, the very opposite of what the saboteur promises you. Again, what influence might this saboteur have had on your current situation? The hyper-rational promises you that it can help you to make better decisions using the rational processes of the mind, and it can protect you from people's messy emotions and needs. However, people are emotional human beings, and you're missing out on an important aspect of life. This saboteur has a negative impact on your relationships with others, as you risk coming across as intellectually arrogant and lacking the empathy, the care, and the compassion that others need. What influence might this saboteur have had on creating your current situation? Right, number 7, the restless tells you it can make sure you experience life most fully by constantly seeking excitement and stimulation. As a result, you're not present to life, as you're avoiding the pain and the suffering that is inherently part of your life experience. We can only truly know pleasure if we know pain. What influence has this saboteur had? Our second last one, the controller. The controller tells us that it can control the outcomes to make sure you get exactly what you want. The controller is in charge and takes control. However, this only drives short-term results and denies the lack of influence you have in the long term, and the real lack of control you have over some of the aspects in your life. How much influence does this saboteur have in your current situation? And lastly, the avoider tells us it can make your life far more harmonious by being the peacemaker and by avoiding conflict. However, by avoiding conflict, you land up feeling anxious all the time, and life becomes unpleasant as a result, as you're waiting for things to explode. And what influence might this saboteur have had on creating the current situation you find yourself in? So if this short exercise has been insightful and valuable for you, you can take this further. You can log on to the website that you see on the bottom of the screen, and you can complete the online assessment, and you will receive a report that tells you which one of these saboteurs is occupying the most space in your mind, and of course, which are the other ones that are active, so that you can become a lot more conscious and aware when they are telling you these wonderful lies and preventing you from achieving what it is that you truly want to achieve in your life. Now let's turn our attention to your sage. Your sage represents the deeper and the wiser part of you. It's the part that can rise above the fray and resist getting carried away by the drama and the tension of the moment, or of course falling victim to the lies of the saboteurs. Its perspective on any challenge you are facing is that it is either already a gift and an opportunity, or it could actively be turned into one. So just hold that thought for a moment. The challenge that you are currently facing, it is already a gift and an opportunity, or it could actively be turned into one. Let's see how we can explore that going forward. So your sage has access to 5 great powers in your mind. And your sage taps into these powers to meet any challenge. So these 5 great powers are to explore with great curiosity and an open mind, to empathize with yourself and others and bring compassion and understanding, to innovate and create new perspectives, to navigate and choose a path that best aligns with your deeper underlying values, and to activate and take decisive action without the distress or the interference or the distractions of your saboteurs. So you have a great reservoir of these powers within you, and most often they go untapped. If you can access your sage to overcome your challenges, you will experience sage feelings of curiosity and compassion, creativity, joy, peace, grounded decisiveness, even in the midst of a great crisis. Therein lies your resilience. Ultimately, our self-care strategy is to weaken our saboteurs, those limiting thoughts in our minds, and to strengthen our sage in order to access these 5 great powers of the mind. So how can you access these great powers? The problem is, in our typical use of these powers, the saboteurs interfere. Now, not every challenge will require you to use every one of these sage powers. But once you activate your sage and you start accessing that part of your brain, you will know which power to use when. So let's go into each one of these powers, access that part of your brain, and apply it to the current challenge that you are experiencing. Right, so as children, we all knew how to explore in a pure way, to experience great curiosity and fascination in discovery. The sage way of exploring has a very similar purity, like a child walking along the shoreline, turning over rocks to see what's underneath. The pure energy and emotion that the sage's explore power generates is based in curiosity, in openness, in wonder, and in fascination of what's being explored. A strong sage can activate this exploration mindset even in the midst of a great crisis. Now, how often do you find yourself in a place of deep curiosity, openness, and wonder in the middle of a challenging situation or crisis? Chances are not very often, because of interference from our saboteurs. We are often too busy trying to anticipate the next step or maneuvering to win the argument to let our sage explore. Our saboteurs have us look only for what proves the other wrong. The controller only picks up on evidence to insist on its own way so it can take control. The hypervigilant only picks up on signs of danger and ignores all other indications of the contrary, so you just don't have a full picture. The avoider tries to ignore all signals that something difficult must be confronted and potentially there's conflict lying ahead. You get the picture. This comes at an enormous cost to us. We torpedo our ability to truly discover all the important and relevant information before we move on to a solution or action. We miss out on discovering the most transformational and important stuff, things we didn't know we didn't know. So we're going to play a game. I invite you to the sage power game called the Fascinated Anthropologist. When you play the role of fascinated anthropologist, you become a keen observer and discoverer of what simply is, without trying to judge, change, or control the situation. I invite you to try to be a fascinated anthropologist in the bad situation you find yourself in currently. A fascinated anthropologist does not selectively filter information that fits his or her pre-existing judgments or desired outcomes. Think about how you could turn this bad situation into a gift or into an opportunity. What is the gift or the opportunity that this challenging situation is bringing you? The time frame doesn't matter. It could be within days, months, or years. So take just a moment and jot down your thoughts around how this bad situation, this challenging situation, could be the biggest gift or the biggest opportunity for you. And I'll continue in a minute or so. Okay, let's have a look at Sage Power 2. Sage Power 2 is to empathize with yourself and others and bring compassion and understanding to absolutely any situation. Think about this sage's power to empathize as the antidote to the saboteur's judgment and lies and badgering. I believe that most of us are doing our darndest to be the best human being we know how to be. We are all imperfect. We fall short of our ideals almost all the time. As a result, we are badgered by our own and other saboteurs almost constantly. So how about we cut ourselves and one another some slack? I want to invite you to visualize, this is the Sage Power game, to visualize the child. I want to invite you to visualize yourself as a child in a setting where your essence is shining through. Think back to a time, perhaps where you were holding a puppy, building a sandcastle, chasing a bunny, or snuggling and cuddling with a loved one. Pick a vivid image that instantly triggers feelings of caring and empathy. After this seminar, you might even want to find an actual picture of yourself as a young child, where your personality is just shining through, your essence is tangible. Maybe put that picture on your desk or on your phone or on your computer so you can see it frequently. This image is a reminder that your true essence is worthy of unconditional caring and empathy. And when you're feeling beaten down by your saboteurs, you're just not doing good enough, you're failing, you're not winning, whatever that voice of your saboteur is in your mind, look at that picture and remind yourself your true essence is worthy of unconditional caring. The same holds true for generating empathy for others. If you choose to activate your sage's power to empathize, visualize the other person as a child in her true essence. Visualize her eyes and facial expression, her manner of carrying herself, what used to light her up as a child. Visualize her holding her puppy, snuggling with her mom, or chasing a butterfly. Trust that the same beautiful essence inside this child is still inside her today. You can do this in the back of your mind, even when you're interacting with her in a meeting. It will instantly impact how much empathy you feel and how the other person feels your presence. So I'd like to invite you to think about you in this challenging situation you're currently experiencing. Just for a moment, apply that unconditional love and empathy and compassion for yourself in this situation. Just acknowledge that. And the second part is think about any other people who might be playing a role in this bad situation and apply the same empathy and compassion towards them. Take a moment and jot down your thoughts. And again, I'll continue in just a minute or so. All right, let's explore Sage Power 3 to innovate and create new perspectives and outside-the-box solutions. True innovation is about breaking out of the boxes, the assumptions, the habits that hold us back. The operating question for the Innovate Sage Power is, what's a whole new way to do this? We are all stuck in all sorts of boxes all the time. The set of beliefs and assumptions that we operate under form the walls of our boxes. Many of these limiting beliefs and assumptions, all produced by our saboteurs, are unexamined or even unknown. When we try to have a purely left-brained and rational approach to innovation, we will only come up with various configurations of solutions that still operate within those very same limits. Without the sage's power of innovation, we stay in our box, merely changing our location within the box. Your own internal mental promise should be to generate as many ideas as possible in rapid fire succession without any evaluation of the ideas that come to mind whatsoever. The aim of the innovate mode is the volume of ideas, not the quality. This will lead to a higher quality of ideas automatically as it energizes the sage part of your brain, the PQ brain, the engine where your greatest ideas live. And the good news is that all you need at the end of this process is just one idea that you would take forward. So now you're going to play the Sage Power game, Yes and. So to play Yes and follow every new idea you have by saying, yes, what I love about that idea is, and you add to that idea. So with this approach, every idea is appreciated rather than judged before the next one is generated in reaction to that idea. You keep going as fast as you can in rapid succession. And of course, this game can be played all by yourself in your own mind. but also with others or in a team setting. So earlier, I invited you to think about how you could turn this challenging situation, this bad situation, into a gift or an opportunity. Now I want to invite you to come up with the ideas on how you can realize the gifts or the opportunities that you came up with earlier, using this yes and game. So remember, there's no space for evaluation or judgment in this game. So I encourage you to play this game for about a minute and just jot down as many thoughts as come to mind. Remember, these are all the ideas that you are coming up with that will allow you to shift the challenge to become the gift and opportunity that you thought about earlier. So see how many ideas you can come up with. Okay, let's move to Sage Power 4. Sage Power 4 is to navigate and choose a path that best aligns with your values and your purpose. The Sage's power to navigate is about choosing between various paths and alternatives based on a consistent internal compass. The coordinates on this compass are your deeply held values, or what gives your life a sense of meaning and purpose. If you keep navigating with this compass, your cumulative choices will generate the fulfillment that comes from living life in alignment with your ideals and your principles. Many people think that the answer to the meaning of life will one day emerge in fanfare and fireworks. They feel stuck because they don't have the full clarity about their purpose in life or what would make their life happiest or most meaningful. I tell them to consult their Sage's navigation compass for the little steps, knowing that these little steps will eventually get them to a very meaningful place. Without the compass, we could take many steps that in their own might appear successful, but in the end could have us running around in circles. So this is my favorite Sage Power game. It's called Flash Forward. And I want to invite you to imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back at the choices you are now facing. From that vantage point, think about the list of options that you've come up with to turn your bad situation into a gift or an opportunity. And identify which option you wish you had chosen at this juncture in your life. The reason this exercise works is that at the end of our lives, many of the trivial saboteur-related concerns fall away. The things that truly stand out are those that are real, those that bring value, meaning, and purpose to our lives. So imagine yourself at the end of your life, looking back at the choices you are now facing. And take a moment to reflect and jot down some of your thoughts. And I'll carry on in a minute or so. So by now, my hope is that you have a sense of what are the meaningful actions or action that you can take to turn this challenge that you are currently facing into a gift or an opportunity. And here we have our final sage power, to activate and take decisive action without the distress, interference, or distractions of the saboteurs. Some worry that the sage's attitude of accepting everything as a gift and opportunity will lead to passiveness, laziness, and a lack of ambition and action. The reality is exactly the opposite. The sage's activate power moves you into pure action, where all your mental and emotional energies are laser focused on action and not distracted by the saboteurs. You need the sage's power to activate when it's clear what course of action you want to take. This power allows you to move into pure action without the procrastination, distraction, or the interference that the saboteurs cause. When you watch a martial arts master in battle, such as one of the Jedi in Star Wars, you get a sense of the pure action of the sage. When a warrior with a strong sage is attacked from all sides, he knows that the only way he can survive is by completely quietening and centering his mind. This means pushing aside all the mind chatter coming from saboteurs. Doing so allows the sage to concentrate all his mental power on the urgent task at hand. If for one split second he allows himself to get angry at the enemy attacking him from the left, that momentary lapse of focus could mean getting killed by the enemy attacking from the right. The paradox here is that the most urgent action can be taken by the quietest of minds, those that are free of the saboteur interference and can concentrate on pure action. This is the opposite of the frantic energy that most of us bring to urgent situations. So you've identified the option that will generate the fulfillment that comes from turning your bad situation into a gift or an opportunity, and from living life in alignment with your ideals and your principles. I want to invite you to play our last power game, and that is around mindfulness practice. Think about what conversations, think about what action you will take in order to achieve the outcome that you seek. If you can imagine that you've already achieved this, what conversations did you have and with whom? What were the obstacles that got in the way? How did you overcome them? What inner resources did you access in order to achieve this outcome? So I want to encourage you now just to write down one thing. And that is, what is your commitment to taking just one step right now to transforming this challenge into a gift and opportunity? Just take a moment and write down, what is that one commitment that you can make to yourself? Okay, so this piece around mindfulness, I'm not going to go through the whole piece because I'm approximately 3 minutes just behind schedule. What I want to say though is there are so many different mindfulness practices that you can choose from. I encourage you to select just one or two to start with and practice them daily for 1 week. I encourage you to turn at least one of your current daily practices or one of your daily routines into activities that allow you to access and strengthen your sage brain. So just one example, the next time you brush your teeth, see if you can become laser focused on one physical sensation of brushing for a minimum of 10 seconds. Feel the vibrations of the brush's bristles against your teeth and your gums. Smell the toothpaste. Feel the bubbles of the toothpaste foam bursting in your mouth. Focus on one of these sensations at a time and keep letting go of the thoughts that come to you whilst you are practicing this mindfulness technique. You can see a number of different examples on the screen, turning your physical exercise routine into an opportunity to access and strengthen your brain. The sheer pleasure of eating, listening to music, being with loved ones. Just 1 minute of being fully present with a loved one has a deeper and more lasting impact on your relationship than spending a whole day together while you have a scattered mind. So my message to you is to find mindfulness practices that allow you to become present in that moment fully and allow you to let go of the thoughts, the busyness, the saboteurs' voices that are going on in your mind. So this really is a summary slide. If you like, take a screenshot or take a photo. If you have found the power games useful, it really just explains to you what are those sage powers, when would you typically need each one, and what was the power game that we practiced together today. And you can always revisit this and do it for yourself. With the recording, of course, you'll be able to go back to the recording. I acknowledge that you didn't have much time in each of your reflections. I gave you just on a minute for each one. And this kind of reflection might be calling you to spend a little more time doing that. Right, so you have the choice to implement some self-care strategies to develop your resilience and live beyond the challenges you're currently experiencing. Firstly, I encourage you to put a plan in place to address the aspects of your life that need self-care. So perhaps do this exercise, reflect on this wheel, and come up with a plan. In addition to that, you need to weaken your saboteurs in your mind by preempting them and being aware when they're interfering and making it difficult for you to achieve these self-care plans. And thirdly, strengthen your sage brain every day by accessing these 5 powers of the mind. Mindfulness practices can be done each and every day, and that goes a long way to access the sage part of your brain. That's a very special quote for me. The very core of the cosmos is stillness and peacefulness. If you are touched by it, everything about you will be transformed. So we really can't control or choose much of what happens in work and in life. We can, however, determine the impact that these events have on us by choosing how we respond to them. I invite you to let your sage do the choosing. Water only those seeds in your mind that you want to see grow. I hope that by going through this process with me, you are able to walk away with a different perspective around the challenge that you brought into this session, and that through accessing your sage brain, you have greater clarity and greater stillness and groundedness in order to drive it forward and transform it into a gift and an opportunity in your life. If you would like to know more about positive intelligence, Shirzad has recently published a book called Positive Intelligence, and I recommend it as a very worthwhile read. I thank Shirzad Shamin for sharing this content and agreeing to us sharing it with you today. Thank you to all of you for opening up your minds to a different perspective. I do hope that this experience leaves you more consciously aware of the choices that you're making and how these choices are shaping how you are experiencing your life right now. And as a result, that you're able to go forward with better self-care strategies in order to live beyond your challenges and to live beyond your circumstances. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Leanne. It was a total different experience today, letting us all float a little and being in our flow and rethinking situations. And well, brushing my teeth tonight will be a totally different experience, I'm sure.
Yes.
So it was really wonderful having you. I don't know if there are any questions from the audience so far. I really, well, if they are, of course, we would love to answer, but
Yeah, absolutely.
As this was such a complete image you're presenting, this was this kind of complete journey. I think there's not much to expect, because we are all right now in a different mood and in a different kind of world thinking. So thanks a million to your thoughts. It was really great having you, and I'm sure whenever one of the audience or others who will watch the recording we did will come back to us, I can forward it to you, and you are happy to get into contact with our audience, or don't you?
With pleasure. My email is on the screen at the bottom. My company is Deale and Associates. You are so welcome to
okay, and we do have your email address as well, so we are happy to forward it. And well, yeah, thank you. And
can you hear me? Hi.
Yes.
So Leanne, I just wanted to, I'm South African as well, and I actually connected you to our group. I'm actually president of the organization, so it's really great to be something, I'm very proud of, of the organization, and I'm really proud of South Africans, because it's amazing how resilient we are as people, and your spirit is really amazing. Well, just a comment, a question I've got is, I find at the moment, it's so hard at the moment, in our business, it's just been decimated and nothing's going on. How does one actually break that? You know what I mean? To break the spirit of, just of hopelessness and of depression and trying to get, and that's just sometimes so hard. It's very motivating what you talk about, but sometimes you just feel so broken. How do you, get to do some of these things? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure you all noticed that my lights went off, and that was load shedding kicking in here in South Africa. And I'm very grateful my UPS worked because it was not planned. So I breathed a big sigh of relief at that point. Justin, thanks for your question. I think it's a really critical question. And I guess as a therapist, as a coach, I come from the space of calling each and every one of us to take responsibility for our lives. Now, when you say we're in such a really dark space and we feel the pain that brings us, we need to step aside and ask ourselves the question, is this how we choose to feel going forward? Do we like to feel hopeless or as a victim or pain? Is that something that we would like to feel going forward? And the answer is absolutely not. We don't want to feel that. And in that moment, we take responsibility and we own the fact that we can control our thoughts. And we observe those thoughts or those saboteurs that come up in our minds that are creating the way that we feel. Because the way we think influences how we feel. It shapes our emotions. And therein lies the space from where we act. So to change the way we're feeling, we have to change the thought that creates that feeling. So each and every time you're able to do a mindfulness practice, find some quietness and breathe, those thoughts come into your mind. And straight away you acknowledge that's a limiting thought. It's a negative thought. It's a destructive thought. These are the thoughts that are creating my feeling of hopelessness, my feeling of being like a victim. And you let those thoughts go. You intervene and you replace those thoughts with thoughts that come from the sage part of the brain. So one might say, this is such a hopeless situation. We're never going to survive. We are going to continue struggling for the rest of this year. You stop that thought because it makes you feel desperate and hopeless. And instead you say, how might this situation, which could continue for the rest of this year, bring a gift or an opportunity? What might that look like? So that's the inner work that needs to be done. What's really helpful, Justin, is to find a buddy, is to find someone who subscribes to the same way of dealing with the challenge, someone who's also willing to access the sage part of the brain, because then you have someone who can fuel that positivity and fuel that sense of responsibility for shifting the way that you feel. On your own, it's absolutely possible. It's easier when you have someone who walks that path with you. Does that make sense, Justin?
Oh, definitely. I mean, I think it's like you say, you've got to, I often think fake it till you make it, you know, talk yourself into, I think it is making sense.
Yeah. And, you know, the exciting part for me is the neuroscience is compelling. The research that's come through over the past 12 months during COVID has been compelling. If you are able to do mindfulness practices each day where you access that sage brain. So let's say you play one of these 5 sage games a day, and you have a 3-minute mindfulness practice when you're brushing your teeth. If you just do that each and every day for 7 weeks, the saboteur part of the brain weakens and the sage part of the brain strengthens. You can see how the muscle in that part of the brain has grown. And therefore, going forward, you are so much more resilient. You are so much more able to access that part of your brain and shift a challenge into an opportunity or a gift. You're able to empathize as opposed to getting angry, so much easier. So this is a challenge to you to really try and apply this for a mere 7 weeks, and life will be fundamentally different because you've changed the anatomy, the structure of your brain.
Thank you. Thanks.
Justin, the good thing is you have a lot of partners in this industry right now because everybody has these feelings.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
Yeah, we are all looking for what's happening, how will the industry change, what are the opportunities we can witness right now, and we have to look for. Yeah, because there will be a tomorrow, but the tomorrow will look different than the today is. This is something for sure, and this is something we are all aware of. We don't have the idea of the gift. There will be some for sure.
Yeah.
And the challenge is to focus on those. And when you talk with one another, focus on what that gift might be. What is the opportunity that's coming? Mine it, explore it. And by the end of that conversation, you are energized. You're excited. As opposed to feeling at the end of the conversation when you've discussed every single part of the suffering that you're experiencing, you could stick a needle in your eye and it would be relief. So it's how we choose to spend our time, how we choose to engage with one another. That is incredibly powerful. So hold yourself responsible and others responsible around the kind of conversations that you have.
Thank you.
So, Leanne, thanks again. It was brilliant having you. And yeah, as you see, talking now to the audience, Leanne has quite hands-on approaches and answers to you, which really helps you to run your daily business and succeed in your daily life. And I just witnessed that AstraZeneca vaccination isn't allowed in Germany anymore. This is the new sticker coming along right now. Different story. Good thing. Our heroes, our aces, our fans, our sponsors, we do have at IFS, and this is the part where we always have to say thank you that they are supporting us even in these severe times. And then, well, from consciousness, we go to subconsciousness, which is the next solution session, which will be about the power of subconsciousness. So how to run decisions, how decisions are run, and how we can use this power of subconsciousness for our communication and for our marketing when hopefully coming sooner than later back to stage, back to our exhibition and events industry. And this is what I wanted to promote at this point. So the next solution session will right before Easter. It will be the 29th of March. And we will then have Gesa Lischka from an agency called Kochstraße, which is situated in Hanover. And she will talk about this subconscious decisions. And to you, Leanne, thanks again. Big hug.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure having you. And yeah, stay in contact, stay in touch. And for sure, next time I'm in South Africa, which will happen hopefully sooner than later, I'll give you a shout.
That would be wonderful. Thank you for creating the space for me to do the purposeful work that I'm called to do in my life. I'm very grateful to you all. Take good care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye to all of you.
Bye. Bye-bye.